As well as regular needles, and your machine will come with a standard needle in it, you also will need other specialist needles, in particular things like ballpoint or stretch needles, and you need these to sew stretchy fabrics. It's a different type of needle. You can also get needles for embroidery stitching, for metallic thread stitching, wing needles and twin needles are another favourite of mine which I'm going to show you in a minute. Ballpoint needles have slightly curved or rounded tips. You can't really see that, but it means that the fabric is parted rather than pierced, which is perfect for stretch fabric. And in fact, if you don't use the right needle, again, you can get skip stitches, but you can also snag the fabric. So firstly, I take out the other needle, and you can see I've used my little screwdriver tool. Now you can use a screwdriver, or this machine has this little tool, and I've loosened the screw that holds the needle. And then I just need to pop in a new needle. Now, a word about needles, it really is so very important not only to use the right needle for the fabric you're sewing, but to change your needles regularly. You really do need to change your needles sort of every 8 hours of sewing, or if you're sewing quite a big project, every big project. They do blunt. Blunt needles cause skip stitches, snagged fabrics, broken thread, can do quite a lot of damage. So, my needle. It has a flat section on the shank. The flat to back. The flat goes to the back. So again, when you're inserting the needle, you push it up into the needle hole and push it up as far as it will go with the flat to the back of the machine, and then turn the screw holding it in by hand, and then a final twist with the little tool or the screwdriver so that it can't accidentally work free. So that now is a nice needle to go with my stretch fabric. I thread the needle, and I'm going to choose, because this machine has one, I'm going to choose the stretch stitch on this machine, which is this one here. It's a little slanty zigzag. Some machines have them, and if you do, it's a fine stitch to use for your stretchy fabrics. So in order to choose that stitch, I have got my selection on the stitch. I can plus it through until it gets to number 6. Now this is a computerized machine, fabulous little machine. This means that the stitch length and the stitch width is automatically set, ready to stitch exactly as the manufacturer's intended. So I'm putting my fabric under here, ready to sew the seam, and it's going to be a little zigzag stitch, because that means that when I try and wear something on stretchy fabric that needs to stretch to get on, it will stretch with the fabric rather than snap, which is what a straight stitch can do. Now if your machine doesn't have a stretch stitch like this, you can do the same thing with a small zigzag. So I'll just show you what I mean. I'll increase and change to my zigzag stitch, but I am going to alter the width of it because I don't want it to be as wide as the natural setting. So I've just got a straight zigzag stitch instead, and it does the same job. It will stretch with the seam. So there you have, you've got two options. You can see it's stretching, and the same here with the stretch stitch, it stretches with the seam. And you need that for any horizontal seams that go over the body and need to stretch. If I didn't do that, if I used a straight stitch, so I sew a stretchy fabric with a straight stitch, and what will happen is when I try and stretch this lovely, beautifully made garment over my head, the chances are that when I stretch the fabric, I'll break the stitching. But if I've used my stretch stitch or zigzag, it stretches along with the fabric. Perfect.